Appreciate everyone being here. If you haven't had a chance, this is a new QR code for the Slido app. If you want to go ahead and grab that real quick, you can provide questions throughout the presentation, and then in about the final 10 minutes, we'll go through the list and address as many as we can, but we'll try and hold the questions to the end so we get through all the content. A few quick announcements. If you haven't had a chance, as you well know, you sign up for PDHs at the front. There's a sign-in sheet. There's no paper handouts, but the email will come with the information at a later point. To make sure we have plenty of time for content, we're going to jump right in, but this is room 6, the 10:15 to 11:30 slot. We're going to learn about OpenX and digital delivery, so really appreciate everyone being here. We'll get started here. We'll just go ahead and jump in. Again, if you've got questions, be sure to grab this Slido QR code up on the screen. You can type in your questions, and we'll go through that list at the end of the presentation. We'll leave about 10 minutes for that. So with that said, we will jump right in, and I'll turn it over to the presenters so we have plenty of room. Thanks for everybody being here.
Turn over to you guys.
Good morning, everybody. We have a lot of information to cover, so we'll get through this quickly. My name is David Claudio. I'm in the robot design department, or unit, and am I not close enough? There we go. Is that better? Yeah, so my name is David Claudio. I am in the robot design unit, and I am here representing the OpenX steering committee. And today we're going to talk about what OpenX implementation is, why it's important, and NCDOT's efforts to fully transition. We'll get a brief overview of how digital delivery will benefit all aspects of a project's lifecycle. And now it's time for a Slido poll. So what words best describe your feeling about 3D modeling? Scared.
There is a profanity filter built in.
Stressful.
Well said, Jan. Good idea.
Tedious. Yeah. Cool. I like these responses. Costly. Yeah.
Nice group.
Yep. All right. I like seeing excited. I like seeing cool. Stressful, overwhelming. Hopefully we can correct those and fix those concerns. Arg. All right.
David, somebody said evil.
Evil. That's, yeah. All right, well, let's get moving forward. Thanks for those comments. Those are fun, entertaining. So OpenX platform. OpenX represents a major change in the evolution of design software. The potential benefits of switching to OpenX include things like data and design integration, improved software capabilities, and an enhanced platform for multidisciplinary coordination. Digital delivery is the transition away from traditional paper PDF plans to the future of 3D models. This includes a focus on both design and asset information. Now, NCDOT is undertaking 2 initiatives, with one being the digital delivery, actually 2 initiatives led by steering committees, one being the Digital Delivery Steering Committee. They're developing a roadmap for all data that will be used throughout the full project lifecycle. This includes data governance. The OpenX Implementation Steering Committee is developing standards and processes for effective implementation to the OpenX software platform. As NCDOT moves forward towards more efficient use of digital methods for project delivery, all phases of a project lifecycle will be affected. This includes design, construction, maintenance and operations, and asset management. The OpenX Steering Committee is focused on both short-term and long-term goals. Our short-term goals will be focused on developing design standards and interdisciplinary workflows that are needed during design to produce a 2D deliverable plan set. Short-term goal, 2D plan set. Our long-term goals are OpenX will have a part in all periods of a project lifecycle. This means that the 3D model produced in design will then get carried forward into construction, onto maintenance and operations, onto asset management. Long-term goals. So let's take a look at OpenX project implementation. So why is, we lost our pictures in the slide. Why is converting to OpenX important? Not many people like change. It's especially difficult when the path forward is not clear. Let's take a look at a couple of pressing issues that are driving this change. There's part of that last slide. Let's keep going. Back on course. So, issue number one. Bentley has ceased support for the V8i Select Series line. They have moved forward with the Connect Edition, which includes all OpenX platforms. That would be Open Roads, Open Bridge, Open Ground, Open Rail. Microsoft, as our second issue, will no longer support Windows 10 on or after October of 2025. It is likely that NCDOT will transition NCDOT out of Windows 10 before this time period. That means the current design software will be even further at risk once we transition to Windows 11. Now, we have asked the question, will V8i work with Windows 11? And that is something that we are currently trying to assess and get an answer on. That's part of the risk assessment, and hopefully we have that answer soon. We do know that the longer that we delay implementation for OpenX, the more projects that will be at risk for delays and increased expenses from working on an unsupported platform software. So let's take a look at where we have been with OpenX migration. Initiation began back in August of 2018. The Open Roads Designer Migration Memorandum, tentatively, it's important, set the ORD implementation timeframe for the first quarter of 2019. In that memo, it did identify, here's some chuckles, it did identify that were still some significant issues that needed to be addressed before full implementation could be achieved. I'd like to add that during this implementation early on, this effort was greatly impacted during 2020 when all of NCDOT staff was transitioned to work from home status. So during that time, we didn't stop efforts, but it did slow our efforts. In September of 2021, well, actually, it's back up. With everyone working from home, the migration efforts were slowed, but they did not stop. In September of 2021, NCDOT Open Roads Designer Implementation Initiative Training Guidelines were rolled out. This is a comprehensive document that includes training guidelines, CAD conversion guidelines, and other guidance documents that were developed to help guide NCDOT and its partners. At the same time, there's an extensive coordination between NCDOT and Bentley to resolve bugs within the OpenX software. In December of 2022, there was a PEF readiness survey that was sent out and completed. This survey was to assess the readiness to transition to the OpenX software platform. We received feedback from 44 firms. 25% of those firms were identified as small professional services firms. we noticed a theme in a lot of the responses. The number one theme was anticipated loss of productivity. This text is small. Other themes we saw were additional costs likely needed. There's a need for strong integrated NCDOT support during transition. There's a need for training opportunities for staff. There's concerns about Bentley software issues. And they identified there were some disciplines that still did not have all discipline-specific features ready. The following month, the OpenX Steering Committee was formed. This committee is a multidisciplinary committee with both representatives from NCDOT and our PEF partners in the industry. The goals of this committee are to guide NCDOT in implementation of OpenX and provide support to project delivery teams during implementation. Early on, we knew we needed to establish a risk management process. The OpenX Steering Committee partnered with the Value Management Unit to develop our risk management process. They compiled responses from that PEF survey and feedback from our ORD internal working groups to develop this risk assessment. This assessment was focused on reducing uncertainty, improving communication, identifying ownership of the risks, and improving continuity amongst our disciplines. Okay, the bottom half of the screen is a snippet from our RAW, our risk assessment worksheet. The risk assessment began with risk identification. As I mentioned, these risks were identified from the responses that we received, followed by risk assessment. Risks were assessed based on probability of occurrence and the likely impact of the risk to the project. And then we came up with risk strategies or response strategies that included an action plan, a risk owner, and deliverables. One of the first action items that we took away from that was we needed to reach out to project development teams to determine the current status of projects in the transition from V8I to OpenX. We received feedback from all 14 divisions, from the Project Management Unit, Structures Management, Rail, and NC Toll Authority. The focus of this assessment was on the design software that was being used for both the primary plan set and also trying to understand what supplemental design softwares we needed to address within OpenX platform. The committee placed low risk on projects that were being let in the next 12 months. So we looked at projects that would let after mid-2024. These are the ones that had higher risk to us. Approximately 1,000 projects met this criteria. We identified a small group of projects that we could exclude because they were not using design software or they simply hadn't started yet. We expected those to begin in ORD. This reduced our list down to approximately 853 projects. What we found out is that approximately 34% of those projects identified were already working or being developed in ORD. As a reminder, this information was provided specific to primary plans, so we weren't looking at open bridge, we weren't looking at open ground, primarily open roads. This information is encouraging, looking at about almost 300 projects being developed in ORD, but we knew that still left us with about 550 projects that needed to be converted. So a lot of work left to be done. Now that we had an idea of how many projects we were looking at, we gathered some more data. This included the total number of projects versus the projects currently being completed in V8I, how many projects were let by month, and the costs associated with each project. This information was used to evaluate department-wide risks and used by the committee to help determine an OpenX implementation date. Short-term expectations. The OpenX Steering Committee is working to finalize a date in mid-2024 where all projects must be converted to the OpenX platform. Anything that deviates from this date will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. This cutoff date is specific to the use of OpenX for 2D deliverables. These deliverables will be consistent with current department guidelines. Earlier this month, in an effort to support our project managers and project delivery teams, the committee started leading a multidisciplinary effort to convert a handful of projects to OpenX. These projects are a diverse group of projects that have been selected varying on the size, complexity, the stage of development, and schedule. It is also a group consisting of PEF partner projects and internal projects. The desired outcome is to support project managers and project delivery teams. The scope of work is twofold. One is to convert MicroStation VDA files to OpenX. But more importantly, it's to document the process. We want to identify interdiscipline workflows. We want to determine the level of effort that's required to convert these files. We want to identify potential roadblocks in the conversion efforts. With this documentation, we can then develop a draft standard scope of work that can be utilized by all project managers and delivery teams to guide them when they're looking at the effort required to convert their project from V8I to OpenRoads. And as a reminder, this is for 2D deliverables only, short-term goals. So let's recap our ongoing efforts. So the steering committee has completed the risk assessment. In doing so, we've identified a lot of action plan items that we are currently working through. We've developed implementation requirements and a decision matrix. We've identified transition status of active projects. We are moving forward with pilot projects to help understand what it takes to convert these projects, the level of effort and anticipated costs. And then in the near future, expect to see a coordinated outreach on approach to implementation. And next, you will hear from Brian and Kevin on digital delivery.
I'm going to use this just so it's easier to hear. All right. Another poll question. Let's see if we can make this one as entertaining as the last one. So what does digital delivery mean to you? I'm sure you've heard the term thrown around, but what does that mean? Oh, yeah. I think I see a pattern here. Yeah, I think we're good. I appreciate that. Good answers all the way around. Really can't be wrong. But yes, all of the above. I mean, it is an all-encompassing concept. Real quick, a little bit about me, in case I haven't had a chance to meet you yet. I'm Kevin Martin. I work for HDR. I am in the National Digital Delivery Advisory Services Group. I'm based out of Columbus, Ohio, but the accent probably tells you I'm a little further south. I am originally from Kentucky. I retired from the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet a few years ago. I was their digital delivery lead and their CAD and survey manager. So I've lived through this OpenX transition and all of those pains, and have done some digital delivery over the last probably 12 years, trying to implement pieces and parts of that at my old DOT, and now I'm working with HDR and various other states and helping Brian out with this initiative. So looking forward to working with North Carolina. I'm going to talk a little bit about I also wanted to plug our booth. We have an OpenX and digital delivery booth. If anybody wants to come and chat, if we don't have enough time to get through questions, come by. We'll be there the rest of the day, and we have some cool videos going and kind of showing off some of the cool technology that is available out there that could be used to help implement something like digital delivery. So always looking forward to talking about that. So I'm going to talk a little bit here about a national perspective, like what your peers are doing and some of the other federal level initiatives. And then I'll turn it over to Brian to kind of deep dive into North Carolina. So first off, what is digital delivery? And we had that poll question, and I think everybody in this room was actually correct on that. There really is no standard nationwide definition. And I'm not a huge proponent of what digital delivery, the term digital delivery. We use digital project delivery at my old DOT, but I don't think it truly encompasses what it really means. But a definition that we do like to use with our HDR group is here on the screen, and we're talking about really what's bold there, 3D models and other files. So that's very important. That enhance design activities, facilitate construction activities, and to me, probably the most important one there is that asset management lifecycle. We're talking about massive amounts of data and kind of herding those cats so that there's some kind of structure to it and really making the flow of information more efficient. There's also, when we engage people, a lot of us are already working with electronic workflows. There is sometimes confusion between electronic and digital, so I just wanted to mention that real quick. Electronic workflows are PDF. That's an example of an electronic deliverable. Taking that a step forward, what a digital deliverable really is more so, the structured information exchanges. So, a PDF doesn't automatically upload into various systems. You can't just pull that information seamlessly. So the true digital workflow eliminates a lot of that manual data entry, a lot of the redundancy. Think about connected systems. I like to use that term. Some of the DOTs out there today have their own definitions, and it's important that each organization defines this for what works for that organization. A couple of them that I'm working with, Pennsylvania and Arizona, they actually collaborated on their agency's definition of digital delivery that you can see here. Really, they were initially focused on the delivering information to construction, essentially. But they are expanding that vision to look at asset lifecycle management, so yay for that. Utah is one of the front runners with digital delivery. They do have a nice definition here where they're talking about, again, the life cycle of the project. And I think that's probably the most important thing to take away from this. It is far greater picture than just delivering projects to a letting or constructing those projects. It's really the entire life cycle. If you think about, let's use a bridge, for example. If you look at the timeline on that bridge, design, or we'll say planning too, planning, design, and construction, very small blip in the 75, 80. If you're Randy Robinson, you claim to design bridges for 300-year lifespan. But that is a much longer time frame where you're managing that asset. You're using analytics on it. You're using it to plan for how you're going to spend money to maintain it. Resiliency of your network. I think that's a pretty important thing down here in North Carolina. So this is just truly contributing to that really big picture based on individual assets. So some of the concepts of digital delivery, just a little terminology, model-centric, which is also interchangeable, I think, with model-based, but really relying on those evil models that we saw earlier, right? But it's really, not everything is model, but a lot of the information can come from the model. So that's why we say model-centric or based. So the design and collaboration aspect of that, inside of that environment, whether it's three-dimensional or beyond. Contractual model-based deliverables, so then you're passing along that information and you're saying, hey, Mr. Contractor, please build what we give you in this model. And then that handoff for that asset life cycle. So that digital information can persist all the way through, construction into your asset management, your O&M phase, and any other activities for the next foreseeable years. But it's also important to understand what digital delivery is not. So when we talk about 3D models, they're important. I don't want to downplay that. But digital delivery does not mean everything has to be incorporated into a 3D model. We're really talking about, at the heart of it, the information exchange. And if it's a 2D document, if it's a table, if it's a 2D CAD drawing, if that works and that provides the information and connectivity you need, that's fine. So there is a misconception, I think, out there that we're only talking about 3D and beyond, and that's not the case. It's also not an easy transition by any stretch of the imagination. This is not something that, and there are people that have, had initial fears that this is going to be something that you're going to flip that switch and they have to do next week or whatever. But that's not the case. I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about what some of the other states are doing, but it's a multi-year process. It touches so many aspects of an owner-operator that it really, if you slow down and you control that pace of change, you're going to be better off. And then I've had people say, well, what's this digital delivery software that I use? It's not a software. It's not any, it's not new software. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. It's just an amalgam of the things that you're using today. It's just how it's structured, right? Digital information will really benefit everybody in this life cycle approach if you have a good structure to that. So, but just know it's not going to be a one-stop shop. There really is nothing that I've seen on the market that does it all. So some of the benefits that we like to identify, improved design quality, and that's quality. So the information that you can exchange inside of your design models, you can have data-rich models. DOTs and contractors actually using the same data. That was always a big problem that we've had. I couldn't tell you how many times, contractors are just making their own data and the inspectors are out there throwing their hands up and saying, I don't know what to do. I can't inspect them on the same basis. So it's leveling that playing field so that everybody's using the same information. Data visualizations. I had a good conversation with one of the gentlemen from the right-of-way unit. He was pretty excited about how you could use this type of delivery mechanism to visualize, when you're negotiating with a property owner. It's much easier, in my opinion, if you're not used to looking at these, plan sheets. And I come from a DOT that has incredibly busy plan sheets, and the average property owner looks at that and their eyes cross, right? And it's hard to really fathom, and you're trying to explain to them real world conditions after construction, sometimes during construction, using these 2D sheets, right? Having a nice visualization model, and the software, the technology that we have today, it's becoming easier to create that almost as a byproduct of the process without having to go to great lengths to create that individually. Streamlined data collection, and I love this part, reduces duplication of work. I couldn't tell you how much time I've spent in my career doing the same thing over and over again, putting the same information 4 or 5 different places, having somebody downstream that has to take the information that I've created and recreate it because their systems don't talk to one another. They don't have the skills to use that medium for transmitting the information. And then the ability to access the right information at the right time. Real quick story if I have time. Back at my old DOT, I had a friend who was one of our archaeologists, and he told me a horror story. Basically, he needed some information to start his assessment. He had to contact the project manager in one of our district offices, which is similar to your divisions. Several days later, he gets information from the design consultant. So he's already waited a few days just to be able to get the data that he needs. He gets it, and it's in a format he cannot use. I think they send him CAD files, and he's just not, he's more GIS based. He understands some of this, but doesn't have that CAD background. So he requests, hey, can I have this in a different format? 2 weeks later, he's still waiting on data. I told him, the goal of this, what we're trying to do with digital delivery, is to have the information at your fingertips, accessible in a format that you can use whenever you need it, and it's going to be the most up-to-date. Because he has a lot of issues with, they provide him information that's not the latest and greatest because, whatever, it's file management issues or something like that. So that got them really excited. So that's what I mean here by the ability to access the right information at the right time. There are challenges. It's not not all roses. A couple of them that I wanted to highlight. We are fighting against the fact that we do not have in this industry, in this country, open data standards yet. There are, as you can see, movement afoot to try to connect all of this together, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a little bit. But it is a challenge to manage the architecture of this without these open information exchanges in place. So just a little bit, it's not impossible to overcome, it's just a bit of a challenge at this point. And then probably, and I heard, I think David mentioned this earlier, though, the change management. That is always probably the most difficult part of this. People are at the heart of anything that you do, when it comes to implementing digital delivery or OpenX. It's the people that make things happen. So you need to manage that pace. Again, it's not a flip of the switch. It takes time to do this. So, working with you, figuring out what works best for your organization, what delivers the vision that the organization has, and how do you get those people, build up that competency and that confidence in doing something a little bit different. But there are ways, to manage that, and hopefully, some of the experiences that we've had with other DOTs can help, really help manage that pace of change for everybody. So what's going on nationally? Basically, the states in gray are either not doing anything really that lives in this digital delivery universe, or we just didn't know. But as you can see, there's a lot of color on this map. So your peers are trying different things. You see there's different colors, so everybody's kind of doing this at their own pace, with their own unique challenges. But as you can see, there's momentum out there. There's a lot of people who are looking at doing this, and are actually, states in red like North Carolina are actually moving in this strategic planning direction. A few of the other states have gotten out ahead of people. So this is PennDOT's roadmap. They basically said 5 years we want to try a bunch of different stuff under this strategic plan, and eventually by the end of that 5 years, so by 2025, they are ready to actually start implementing digital delivery. Now that's key what I just said. They're ready to start by 2025 after 5 years. That doesn't mean that everything is automatically, boom, digital. But they want to have all the pieces and parts in place, all the kinks worked out, and a vision for now everything moving forward will go along this digital path, these digital workflows. Arizona is similar to that as well. They kind of approached it in the same way, but with a more compressed timeline. But it's not the same scope necessarily. I think when it's all said and done, probably looking at 5 years for them as well. But these two DOTs have decided to do this multi-year phased approach, and look at implementation incrementally to help build up, again, those competencies and work out all the bugs and kinks. Iowa was an interesting case. They had been doing a lot of stuff without a strategic plan, and they realized they were spinning their wheels, so they hit the pause button. And they commissioned a strategic plan, and there's several things that were done here. There was a gap analysis, came up with some guidance for them on how to proceed from this point. But probably the most interesting thing, they had a lot of initiatives that were adjacent to or aligned with digital delivery, but nobody was talking to one another. They were literally doing this in all of these silos, and they just weren't getting anywhere. So that was really eye-opening for them as an agency, that they needed to, really embrace some kind of a plan, some kind of a roadmap, and trust in that process as opposed to everybody's kind of doing their own thing. Now, this is also being supported at the federal level. There's a lot of research over the last few years published on this, and there's, six of them still in progress. I think this would be good, Brian, to put on the website, just link to a lot of these reports. But there's a lot going on out there, and has been for several years, to support all of these different pieces and parts of digital delivery. And then I wanted to point out, too, you have the federal highways, everyday counts, going all the way back to the second round. Different aspects of that are tied to or adjacent to digital delivery. And Brian, who is heavily involved in the round 6 digital as-built and e-ticketing. So that's, support from the feds for sure. They also have grants that really are targeted towards innovation and technologies that will help, push along digital construction activities. And then there's also the Turner Fairbanks stuff there at the bottom. There's just a lot of information out there. A lot of people have studied this, but I almost think they studied it to death. So I'm hoping, especially with North Carolina, hey, it's time to do stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of background. Now let's implement that. Let's take that and put it into a practical solution that works for your DOT or whoever the DOT might be. Oops. AASHTO, there's several committees out there that are working on different things. The Joint Technical Committee on Electronic Engineering Standards, which I used to be a member of years ago, they've kind of embraced the digital aspects of it. So electronic engineering is a little misleading, but they've started looking at, what does this look like for digital delivery or some kind of a BIM plan. So they have this maturity matrix that you can look at as an organization to try to help guide you. And that's just an amalgam of different DOTs that have come together to come up with some strategies. This one I'm actually more excited about. There's a joint subcommittee on data standardization. I think data governance or data standardization is going to be critical for this. There's a small group of states plus federal highways that are doing this. And the cool thing is it's not your typical, all of your technical leads or whatever. I mean, these people are technical, but they come to the table with different backgrounds. And that's what it's going to take for something as broad as data governance, right? You need people with GIS background, construction, operations, design. So they've tried to pull in as many people as they can with a varied background to connect all of this information. And then the last slide, and I'll turn it over to Brian, but there are a couple of pooled funds out there. North Carolina was a member of the BIM for Structures pooled fund. I think the first round of that, or the first part of that is finished. There is a published information delivery manual for BIM for Structures, and I think they're working on, and that's information exchange from design to construction. Oops, hit that. I think they're going to look at that next phase, so going construction to asset management. There's also the BIM for Infrastructure pooled fund, which is just starting. They haven't really done anything yet, but the point is the timelines for these things are pretty long. They're several years away. And as that is moving along, the idea is we can do digital delivery now, but we do want to align with where things are going. So it's always keeping an eye on the developments at the national level, and then hopefully aligning the path of your organization with that. Brian?
Okay, so my name is Brian Edwards. I previously was in the CAD group for many years and came to the construction unit 3 or 4 years ago. And Kevin alluded to this, but I got involved with the FHWA EDC 6 initiative, which is e-ticketing and digital as-builts. And this whole digital as-builts, I guess that involvement has kind of led to this whole digital delivery initiative as we've learned, the value of digital delivery, and again, where I guess where the industry is going. So I did want to just, David kind of touched on this earlier. I did just want to just clarify the difference between digital delivery and OpenX or Open Roads. So really, I mean, digital delivery is just all about just getting that project information, that project data, from one phase of the project to each phase, to the next phase, to the last phase, and then back around to the very beginning again, years down the road, when we have to come back to that area to do more rework. But so Open Roads is really just kind of like we're already focusing on Open Roads or OpenX, and it's just kind of a natural place the natural overlap between those two initiatives. So again, digital delivery is more than just OpenX, but OpenX is definitely a big piece of digital delivery, right? So again, I think it's pretty clear that digital delivery is the future, and really it's already here in many ways. I think we're probably already doing digital delivery, again, in small pieces or here and there. What we want to do is have a more organized department-wide type approach to get the most out of it, right? So, but yeah, we, as a department, we see the value of digital delivery. I mean, a couple of points up here. I think it's pretty clear that, the world has gone digital, right? You don't have to, it's no surprise there. You just, look, everyone's got a smartphone, most everyone, and there's just, we do so much with a smartphone, right? And information or data is the new gold or oil. And here at the department, we collect a lot of information. We generate and collect a ton of information on each project, and so we need to take advantage of that. And if you have information or data that is siloed and it kind of just stays in that one unit who generates it, and it's not as valuable, right? I mean, if other people can't access it and utilize it, then it's not valuable. So we want to have that information integrated or enterprise type informations where it, so we tap into where we can tap into the full value of it. So for this slide here, as we, I guess we have embraced pursuing digital delivery formally, I guess, and we've called it a digital delivery initiative. We didn't want to use the term project because project kind of has this connotation of a beginning and end, whereas digital delivery is really just, I mean, it's just a new way of doing business, right? And so. So anyway, that's kind of how we're viewing it, and I'll touch on, I guess, the gap analysis a little bit later on here. But I wanted to also just say, we've reached out to Kevin at HDR to kind of help us get our arms around digital delivery, what it means, and what might be a good approach for North Carolina. We are definitely interested in understanding what all the other states are doing out there, and there are some other states who are doing some cool things with digital delivery. But Glenda kind of touched on this yesterday, in that we want to be aware of what other states are doing, but that doesn't mean that we're going to do it. We have to make sure whatever we do makes sense for us. That being said, the states, I've got a lot of peers at other DOTs that I collaborate with, and we have this term called, R&D, and it's rip off and duplicate. So we are not afraid to do that, and if it makes sense for us, we'll definitely do that. So we're keeping in touch with what other states are doing there. But okay, so this slide is really just kind of a high-level slide, a high-level view of what we are, what we're doing today, at least in terms of deliverables, and I've just kind of broken it down, just again, very simplistic breakdown from pre-construction to construction, and then asset management. I should have put, maintenance there as well. But, so today, basically, we have the 2D plan sets or the deliverables. We do provide what I'll call it a basic 3D model, grading model. I think it's typically an XML type file. But then, I use this little illustration. We kind of just push that over the wall, right? And so now what construction gets is 2D PDFs, right? And then this, the contractor would get that grading model. But the reality is that the contractor is also building their own 3D model, okay? And so I'm not saying that this grading model doesn't have any benefit to the contractor, the one that we provide. I think it does have some benefit, but they're still building their own model, And so, well, we'll talk about the OpenX in just a minute. But so that's what makes its way over to construction, and then construction again, high level here. Basically they're going to at the end of the project, they're going to mark up those 2D as-built, again, a PDF, and that's just going to kind of make its way over, excuse me, to the asset management side of the house. And again, they will take that information and, again, enter that stuff into their GIS type systems. So that's kind of what we do today. We still kind of have, we kind of have these walls that are, again, a kind of separation of the data, right? And as we think about OpenX, moving forward with OpenX type delivery, so now we have this introduction of a different deliverable, right? At least I'm gonna call it a different deliverable with this 3D model that is like feature rich, has pipes, has maybe design information that's available within within those features, and maybe even some customized data or metadata or attributes that that has been added to those features. Utilities is a big thing, right? I mean, that's a huge opportunity, I think, with OpenX. And so, but yeah, so I'll just use this little graphic. It kind of busts through the wall, so we can get that information, that feature-rich data, can propagate through the wall, make its way over to construction in a useful manner, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that construction has access to the 3D DGN file. I mean, it's not likely a DGN file. I don't think what construction is going to be looking at, right? It's going to be a model. I don't exactly know, the extension, file type extension, right? But it's just be looking at the model, looking at the information. They should be able to access and view it, and then ideally, there's a way to document in the model, append, I guess, that model, or document changes. And then ultimately, again, that kind of makes its way over to asset management, where they can, in a more efficient manner, they can see what's been constructed and access it. Okay, so see if there's anything else on this slide I want to point out. Okay. This slide right here is maybe getting a little more detailed than maybe I should get into here, but so one of the terms that is a term for digital delivery or part of digital delivery is called this Common Data Environment, or CDE, another acronym there. But it's basically just where's your data stored, right? Where is this data stored? Because that's, again, it's digital delivery is really all about this data and being able to access it and utilize it. So Again, back to this simplistic view of our workflow pre-construction. There are 2D plan set information, even the model. Even as we think about OpenX, what's the common data environment for that? Well, it's either project-wise. I guess potentially, I'm not sure. Maybe this should say open roads. I'm not sure, but anyway, I've got it labeled here as just project-wise is the common data environment. When it over in construction. Again, today we utilize SharePoint. Our inspectors utilize SharePoint as our, repository for all of our inspection documentation and workflows are stored in SharePoint. A lot of data going into SharePoint. And then we also have HiCams. That's our materials and materials approvals and really just kind of contract administration system. Again, a lot of data is going into HiCams. Again, a separate system, right? Another separate common data environment. And then ultimately, again, as this makes its way over to asset management side of things, we use Agile Assets, and there may be other. This is just a high-level view. There's likely other common data environments that we've got a lot of data out there that that we represents opportunity for us to implement digital delivery, so that again we can. It doesn't mean that we have to have one common data environment for everything, right? I mean that's not practical. But if we can at least integrate them or figure out how to port that data over across, and again in an efficient manner, that's digital delivery, right? So, okay, but again, we don't want that siloed data, which is really what we have today. And Kevin had a slide on this with digital delivery. I just wanted to kind of add a couple of thoughts here as well. But again, what's the value of digital delivery? Well, the more design information that we can pass along to construction, that's going to equal reduced risk, right? And as that risk is reduced, that should translate into lower. We know higher risk means higher dollars, right? So lower risk is going to mean lower dollars. Modeling of that subsurface. I think we touched on. Someone mentioned utilities. I mean, ideally, we can identify those conflicts in the design side where we have a lot more. I saw a graph earlier today, or either yesterday, on where you can influence and cost. Right, where you want to be on the earlier side of that graph to be able to to impact the cost in a positive way and have the most influence. A better asset visibility and reportability. I mean, I think when I think of digital delivery, it needs to be visual. And it ideally needs to be geospatial and reportable or extractable, and then durable. I mean, it may not meet every single one of these. I mean, it may not meet every one of the criteria that I just listed, but hopefully, it's going to that's going to be part of what digital delivery means. So, improved inventory tracking. This term digital twin you may have heard of before, but again, it's just kind of the idea that, whatever gets constructed, we have that exact replica in a digital form, right? Again, so that we can, if we want to know what's out there, we don't have to go out there in the field. We can just go to the digital twin to see what's out there. So, and again, that can be particularly valuable now, but also years down the road. So, and again, I think there's many more benefits to digital delivery. So NCDOT's approach to digital delivery. So again, it was kind of got started as we were, participating in the EDC 6. We have, I guess, kind of garnered some momentum. We've kind of developed a team of people who are helping to lead this charge. We've kind of brought on board HDR to kind of help us get started. But we do have a project charter And I'll mention to this website in just a minute that we're gonna post up this project charter on our website. We have met with Chief Peoples and gotten his support, and we've got a steering committee that we are, again, ramping up and getting going with this. I mentioned OpenX earlier. Obviously, we got to work closely with them. It's a big, right, especially right now. We are, we're both kind of doing the same sort of thing, I guess. So, and work closely with the industry. We know that with OpenX, we've seen this with OpenX, but obviously with digital delivery, as we begin to require things, it's got to be something that is. That we work closely with you guys on, the industry on, to make sure that it fits and make sure that it works. I mentioned this earlier, that it's not really a project because it's just a new way of doing business. And I think we would if we didn't do a digital delivery initiative, I think we would get there to digital delivery. It would just be kind of here and there, and it would be, not as organized. It would not be nearly as valuable. So I think Kevin mentioned Iowa, or one of the states kind of, I guess, recognized that and recognized they needed a more organized, formalized approach to it. So, and as far as a time plan, Pennsylvania has a 5-year plan. We at least right now, we're not really calling it like a 5-year plan, because, sometimes that people have this idea that, well, I don't have to do anything for 2 or 3 years if it's a 5-year plan, right? So obviously it's going to take time to change. And I think we're thinking of it more along the lines of like an agile approach, where it's kind of these shorter sprint type things, where we just, I don't know, we're going to try to focus on like a 6-month time period to say, okay, what do we need to do here in this time frame? What are our goals? What are we going to try to accomplish? And we do anticipate, doing piloting pretty soon. I think so. Maybe I shouldn't say pretty soon, but the next big thing that we are going to work on, I'm not sure if I've got a slide that says that, is, maybe I do. So, I mentioned the next big thing that we're going to work on is going to be this assessment or gap analysis, as we identify, what are the common data environments that we have, what are the current processes that we're doing, and, what's needed from a digital delivery standpoint. I think part of this is going to be maybe working backwards from asset management and maybe maintenance. What do they need? What's important to them from a design standpoint that they would love to have. And sometimes it's like, well, I didn't even know that information existed over here. And so we just have to help them understand what's available, and then they can tell us what's important, and then we can again begin to focus on those sorts of things. But I mentioned partnering together. Obviously, again, it's going to take teamwork with the industry. It's going to take collaboration and communication within the department. So. It's not going to, it'll be challenging. There's no doubt about it, but I think it'll be worth it. And again, piloting there, I did mention that we do want to do that. I'll say sooner rather than later. I guess maybe that we don't want to wait a long time. We want to somehow figure out how we can get some low-hanging fruit, some quick wins, and build that momentum and start getting people a little more excited about what digital delivery can do. So we do have there again, as we have a there's a PDN newsletter. If you may be on the I guess, the distribution list for that. If you're not, you can sign up for that. But we anticipate providing updates in the PDN newsletter. Okay. So, and also we have developed a website. It's just, it's really just getting started, but we want to get some pictures on there soon. But anyway, so this is just on the Connect website. You should be able to just Google, type in NCDOT digital delivery, and that should get you there. Or you just go to the site you see here under projects, and there'll be a digital delivery link. We've got an email distribution in place, so if you've got an idea, hey, this would be a good digital delivery idea, or a need, or whatever, if or questions, you can email this distribution group. It's going to come to me and a few other folks here. So I think that is it. I mean, again, I think the idea is that, we see that digital delivery is important. We recognize it's the future, and we want to move the department forward. We want to move the department forward and do it in the way that makes sense and adds value to what we do. So that's it. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Great.
Jeff?
And everyone, the Slido app, if you put questions in, we're going to bring that up now. We've got a good 10 minutes for questions. And then before we leave, we are going to have Glenda Gibson help share a blessing before lunch. So stick around for about the next 10 minutes here. We'll start going through these questions. And there's a microphone there, guys. Here's another microphone you guys can carry around. There's one, but you want to jump in?
Yeah.
There's the first one for you there. If you want to read it out loud, or I can read it, or either way.
So when is it expected that drainage design will be ready to be fully integrated into ORD? I'm a roadway guy, come on. So we do know that there needs to be replacement for automated drainage summary sheets. We need a replacement for, I'm drawing a blank, I'm a roadway guy. Geopack drainage, there we go. Anybody here from Hydro? From what, Andy, do you have a short answer for that? Okay. And for geopack drainage, you have a replacement? So 6 months, 2 months? 2 to 6 months, there we go. How about that? Perfect, thank you. So where does the steering committee plan on storing the field data? Project-wise. SharePoint is where we upload our documents. That's our PDF deliverables from those documents. All design data shall be stored on ProjectWise. Are contractors successfully using ORD models in construction? Not yet. Hopefully, like I said, short-term goals is just to get back to a point where we're using ORD to produce consistent deliverables from what we have today. Long-term goals, we'll be working closely with the industry to get contractors to use our model, but we're not there yet. So did the risk assessment that was performed evaluate implementation of the OpenX platform into alternative delivery projects? It did not. We are currently looking at design, bid, build projects. We do know that our partners in design, build, CMGC, NCTA, the Toll Authority, we know we need to work with them on that. Okay. So we are currently in discussions on how that transition is going to take place. Yeah, stay tuned. So with the OpenX deliverable clearly taking a lot of work off of contractors' plate and putting more responsibility on the consultant, will NCDOT compensate the consultants according for additional coordination and responsibility? First, we're going to look at all the efficiencies provided by open roads. We're going to reduce your fees. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, we're going to work with you guys, as always, identify what those efforts are, and treat you guys accordingly and fairly in that process. What is the current status of how signing and sealing plans will work when the design project is a 3D model? So we know we need input from the board. And currently, my understanding is there are no guidelines, there's no adopted method of sealing 3D models at the board level. So that is something, again, that we've been in discussions, and stay tuned for that. Was it the same question? Okay.
No, that's a new question. With respect to the 3D model that incorporates all design disciplines, placing separate plan sets, how will engineers of record seal their respective plans, and how will those seals be secured from design, construction, and maintenance? But it's the same.
Yeah, I think it'd be the same kind of answers that we are currently looking at. Yeah, more to come. How accessible will digital twins be for the PEF since this likely becomes property of the contractor? I would say the engineer of record in the future will be connected to that project all the way through construction, into maintenance, and into asset management. So I think you're going to see a lot more interaction during construction. And again, design bid build versus design build versus other alternatives, it's going to be different. So we're going to have to develop those workflows and processes. Brian, do you have additional input on that? Or Kevin?
You already moved on to a different question. What was the question?
How accessible are the digital twins going to be through construction?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Is this on? Yeah. So, I think we're still trying to figure that out. We don't even know. From a construction standpoint, I break out construction between contractor and then our inspectors. And, I focus mainly on our inspectors. But I don't really know exactly. Bentley has some tools. We think that Trimble has some tools. We're not exactly sure what that's going to look like as far as how we present that model, that 3D model, to our inspectors. I think for the contractors, I'm still not sure exactly how that's going to play out. So, do you have any thoughts, Kevin?
Take this off just so I don't have to hold that. But yeah, as far as contractors go, we are definitely working with them across the country on what information do they need. It's kind of a two-step process. You can give them all the information in the world, but give them something that they can use, so in a format that is usable for their equipment. I like to say feed the machines. So develop a way to extract the information that they need without a lot of rework, because they tell me all the time, every contractor I've talked to about this, the number one thing about really good digital information is it reduces the amount of rework that they have to do to create their own models, and that in some cases is a six-figure charge, and they will pass that back on to the owner-operator. The other thing is I can give them a lot of information, but what do they really need? There's a ton of it. If you look at almost like that timeline of the asset life cycle, there's only pieces and parts of that certain subject matter experts need, like a contractor. Just having the workflows defined so that they know how to extract the information, the information that they need at that particular time. And like Brian said, there's a lot of applications on the market that can help facilitate that. and it's still developing. We're still years away from having, the perfect solution doesn't exist, but it's getting there. And hopefully interoperability between the different applications, because contractors typically are not Bentley shops. So there are some that are, and that amazes me when they tell me that. But hopefully, we can come up with interoperability to the point that it's true interoperability. They're not having to recreate that information. You want me to take the next one, because I'm doing this with PennDOT? Is that okay, David?
Yeah.
If I take the next one? So talking about digital as-built, utility as-built model, yes. I have a lot of workflows for this. We're doing this. PennDOT is starting with utility as-built, and that's going to help define all of their as-built and how that information is collected and stored. So lots of different applications. We're trying out several different methods of collecting the information in the field, who's going to do it, and processing that data back through into what they eventually want basically a GIS repository of digital information for all those utilities. So the owner, the material type, the size, XYZ. There's a litany of information that they want to collect on that. We have some workflows in place for that. So
I wanted to piggyback off that. Is the intent in the long run for the digital twin to be the digital as-built for every project?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's, unless there's a reason why that can't practically happen, but yes, I think that's where we'd like to go, yes. And I think, the contractors can collect this information, sure it'll cost a little bit more, but, again, it's the value, we'll get the value on the back end, I think, is where. Well, at some point, right? I mean, if you don't know.
Well, it depends on the nature of the change. If you're close enough with intolerances and you don't feel a need to update the model, that's perfectly fine. There'll be instances where that might be the case. It comes down to what is the ultimate need. Is it important to document that I had to move that pipe 2 inches to the left versus I had to skew it 18 degrees and extend it 5 feet? In that case, absolutely somebody needs to update that, yeah. And like I said before, it doesn't always have to come from the digital model necessarily. It's really defining whatever works for the owner operator, in this case North Carolina DOT, and the type of information that is important to them. There are some DOTs that, like Minnesota, that do digital asset collection with spreadsheets, and they process that into Agile Assets. It's already doing that. They're already doing that today. It's just a matter of streamlining that process, and I think that was what Brian was getting at. We don't want to overcomplicate this. The best way to do it is to establish a streamlined workflow so that this just happens. It flows naturally from one system to the other, and the workflow to collect that information isn't necessarily a huge stretch. It's going to be a different way of doing it maybe, but building those competencies in and building those documented workflows in to kind of help align it with current processes without having to reinvent that wheel, hopefully.
Hey, and guys, about one more, and then we'll move on to the blessing so we can move on to lunch.
So, Brian, that was more about data storage. I think the answer is, ProjectWise is going to be up in the cloud, and we don't anticipate any concerns with data storage. I did want to hit the next one real quick. So, when can we expect draft conversion process? Well, there's two answers here. One is we already have a conversion process out there, guidelines on how to convert a project. That's that document that was created in 2021. So that is on the website now. But the other one you might be referring to is these pilot projects that we are currently engaged with firms to do that conversion from V8i to OpenX. We are looking at trying to wrap those pilot projects up in the next 30 days, 30 to 45 days. At that time, hopefully within a few weeks, we can get all that data compiled and have those draft standard scopes of work. So hopefully within the next 2 months, we're going to have that process written out.
With that said, let's give these gentlemen a round of applause for this presentation. And greatly appreciate everyone's attendance. I'm going to hand it over to Glenda Gibson for the blessing for lunch, and then we can all go eat.
All right, thank y'all, and thanks for the panel. Great discussion. And if we all had one takeaway, David said it 2 or 3 times. I think, the first step is 2D delivery. 2D delivery on a supportable, OpenX platform. So Open Roads platform is what we're specifically talking about.